Single Action Continuous Improvement's presentation on Phase 1 of our Continuous Improvement Development Guide. This is a bit of an unusual phase in that there really isn't much to it in terms of the number of things that you have to accomplish. There is a massive amount to it though when you consider the intense mental exercise you must do to get your company and yourself to take on a rather significant change. Essentially, there are three things that go into this phase. 1. You have to figure out what lean and continuous improvement are and what they can do for you. 2. You have to look inside a bit and come to the conclusion that you are not happy with where your company is. And 3. You have to decide that taking on the challenge of becoming a lean organization is right for you and will close the gap between where you are and where you want to be. It seems relatively simple, but there are some substantial barriers to figuring those three things out. What is lean? The first barrier is that lean is not a well-defined concept. There's a lot of conflicting information and quite a bit of downright bad information about it. There's also not a lot of agreement on what it actually is. I like to think of lean synonymously with continuous improvement. Others look at lean as a very specific set of tools and principles under the general umbrella of continuous improvement. There are also competing schools of thought. Six Sigma disciples, for example, may see lean differently than someone who cut their improvement teeth with Toyota, one of the stalwarts of lean. You'll also see some unbelievable claims about lean. What to believe? I once had an executive at a Kaizen report out comment on the results that we'd been hearing about week after week. He said something to the effect that if all these report out results were true, we'd be a billion-dollar company with 12 employees working out of about 1,000 square feet of manufacturing space. His point was that there was a lot of exaggeration and that the teams needed to get more realistic in their claims. The issue was one of credibility. And this was for a company that was well entrenched in lean principles. For those just starting out, the claims about lean sound far-fetched. It is especially egregious on sites promoting consulting services. They want you to hire them, so need to paint their services in the rosiest possible light. Generally, these aren't actually lies. Most often, these are cherry-picked results from specific projects or projected gains from an ongoing project. Now, there definitely are some pretty impressive turnaround case studies where lean saved a company. And there are quite a few good examples of strong lean companies. You might have even toured one or more, but for each great story, there are about 3 less than enviable ones. Only about 1 in 4 companies get what they are expecting from lean. So what's my point? It's that it is really easy to dismiss lean as an overhyped option and move on. Instead, I encourage you to do a little more research about what lean can really accomplish for you before relegating it to the trash bin. Lean versus continuous improvement. I probably should address something here in a bit more detail as we move on. The reason I use lean and continuous improvement interchangeably is that at their hearts, both are about incorporating systemic problem solving into your operation. By definition, a problem is a gap between what you want and what you have. Lean has some prepackaged tools for doing this. Policy deployment, for example, provides clarity in defining what you want. Standard work and a full range of data collection and analysis tools provides clarity on what you have. And many of the tools are designed to close that gap in precise sets of conditions. In Phase 1, your job is to read as much as you can about lean with an open mind and see how it might apply to your company. One of the things I'd like you to pay attention to is why companies don't do well at lean. There are a lot of reasons. Some dabble, some look at it as just a set of tools, some give up too quickly. Some don't understand it and dive into it without knowing the pitfalls to avoid. But balance the skepticism with an open mind about what it can do for you. Along the way, as you see new tools and terms, ask yourself how you are doing right now compared to what the tool offers. For example, the term I mentioned earlier, policy deployment, is a tool that takes a high-level strategy and identifies the set of processes that need to be improved to make the strategy a reality. It then splits the responsibility for those processes into chunks and clearly identifies targets for those chunks. This creates alignment throughout the organization. How are you doing? So ask yourself this question. If all of your supervisors and frontline managers hit their goals, would the company achieve its corporate strategy? If you said yes, are you sure? Or is it just gut feel? Repeat the process with every new tool or principle you learn about. For daily management, ask if you can tell at any given time whether your team is on track or off the pace, and why. If you are working on a problem, ask a handful of impacted people if they know what is being done to fix the problem. If you are experiencing frequent shortages of parts, ask what is causing them and what is being done about the problem. The bottom line is that creating a continuous improvement-driven business system can help nearly every company. For some, it will be tweaks and refining practices you are already doing. After all, a lot of lean is common sense. For others, though, it will be a ground-up rebuild. Lean means change. Now, as I mentioned earlier, change is hard for people. Unfortunately, that means that if things are going okay, there is often little incentive to change. A company does not have to be lean to be successful. Some have great intellectual property that fuels the company. Others have a brand name with incredibly strong customer loyalty. Most of these things are tenuous, though. One bad incident can crush loyalty, and obsolescence is always lurking with any product. Most companies, though, don't have a built-in advantage. They're scrappers. They are in a street fight and are battling for every customer nickel. A good continuous improvement management system provides a competitive boost when there is no other advantage. Those are the companies that really benefit from lean, but they are challenged by time. When you are clawing and battling for customers on a daily basis, you have few excess resources to focus on improvement. Most companies wait for a crisis to try lean, which I believe contributes to the low success rate. Lean is hard and takes time to do properly. It raises the degree of difficulty considerably when a company is fighting for survival. Hopefully, you are not in that category of fighting for survival company. But if you are not, if you are competing hard but doing okay, it can be a real challenge to get your team to embrace change. Teams might not see a need, and they are already working hard and don't want to take on more. A key learning point here in Phase 1 is to find ways to create a continuous improvement culture in a methodical way that does not create chaos in your company. If lean looks overwhelming, you will probably balk at attempting the massive change. But if you try to understand how you can roll out the changes over time with a concerted plan, you might find yourself more willing to take it on. In pitching my process here, I try to make the initial phases, at least up to Phase 3, fairly reversible. Those phases focus on the leadership team and creating processes for them. The frontline teams are primarily immersed in problem solving. Whether you pull the plug on lean or not, most of the early changes are beneficial to an organization even if you go back to the old ways. I truly believe that many of the companies that fail at lean do so because they either take it on at a high-risk time, as mentioned earlier, or dive into it without a coherent plan and they overwhelm people. There are lots of reasons, of course, but if you pick a time when there is no crisis and use a logical, manageable transition plan, you'll set yourself up for success better. And again, as you continue listening to this presentation, remember my goal in presenting it. I want you to take on the challenge of creating a business management system that promotes a continuous improvement culture. I want you to dive into researching continuous improvement and lean and Six Sigma until you get comfortable in their potential. Comfortable enough to decide to jump into Phase 2 where you'll start taking actions to commit to change. Leaders bringing lean. Another common Phase 1 situation is when an executive or senior leader with lean experience joins an organization. If this is the CEO or another top-level person, then you might be in Phase 1 as a result of a directive, and you really don't have a choice about moving on to Phase 2. In case that wasn't clear from earlier, Phase 1 has a lot of fallout. Most people who look into building a lean business system just dabble on the research and go no further. That's probably a good thing. If the leadership team isn't excited about lean, the journey is destined for failure. The other type of new employee is when a middle manager is trying to encourage a higher level executive to explore lean. This is harder. Often, a new employee at this level doesn't have the clout to bring change with him or her. It can be hard to get a decision maker to immerse themselves into phase 1. On occasion, an existing employee will start looking into lean. Perhaps a cousin was talking about it, or a former college roommate is now a consultant and is pitching a bit of work. There are a lot of ways to get interested in it. If you are astute, you'll come to a conclusion about phase 1. This is an individual phase. There's no company-wide effort going on here. You may have an organization with a handful of people moving into phase 1 and then abandoning it, possibly over and over during a long period of time. There may be some concerted effort from time to time, but as a rule, what happens is that more and more people graduate from phase 1 and want to go to phase 2, but it doesn't happen until the company leadership team decides it will. If you are not a decision maker, but are convinced that lean is the way of the future, your efforts should be focused on convincing those in charge that it is the way. Obviously not an easy task, but an important one. Keep bringing it up to the leaders. Keep offering them more information. Keep the embers going as long as you can, with the hope that eventually the flame will catch on. Where to start your research. So where do I think you should start your research? I like my own work, the Continuous Improvement Development Guide, and the assorted checklists and directories that go with it. It is a good overview. I also have a book titled, What Do You Mean I Gotta Be Lean, that I really recommend. It has a primer on lean for the first half, and then gives about 100 tips on lean for the second half. I'd read the first half now and save the second half for later. You can also read The Goal, which puts continuous improvement into a novel form. It's not quite lean, but was the first book of its nature, and is close. It promotes the theory of constraints by Dr. Goldratt. A similar easy read is The Gold Mine. It is another book about development in a novel-type format. If you want some heavier reading, there's a lot on the Toyota production system, notably the Toyota Way. There are many websites you can visit. Valaction.com has a load of information and free downloads, and the aforementioned directory can give you a roadmap to navigate the content. Lean.org and leanblog.org also have some great content. If you want to go further, I've got a lot of videos about the tools and principles you will hear about during your exploration phase. Those are at www.valactionstore.com. The point you should take away here is that there is a load of information available to you. I prefer that you put my material at the top of your reading list, but more importantly, I want you to get comfortable with the changes you are facing. The more lean material you expose yourself to, the more likely that is to happen. Keep track of all the material you find during this phase, though. Who is leading your transformation? If you do decide to move forward, you'll need a consistent message to give to your company. That means identifying the training materials you'll be using and creating a resource library. Those are actually checklist items on my list. The most important checklist item, though, is figuring out who is going to be the program leader. Let me take a step back here. Some people have a real problem with this terminology. They balk at the notion that lean is a program. I agree with that in a lot of ways. It is really a way of thinking, not a program. Continuous improvement should be ingrained in your operation. But that is a long way off, and you have to get there first. For lack of a better title, the program leader is the person who helps chart the course and guide the company. I recommend not getting worked up about labels, though. I use the term program because it's familiar to people. Spend your energy on important things, not arguing about names and titles. Along the way, you'll probably change what you call this person. That's a good thing. It means you are evolving. But for now, let's just call a person who is going to be leading the change the program leader. As an administrative point, Valaction System has a lot of focused resources to help you through the steps of the transformation. We've got a lesson specifically on how to select the program leader and what her responsibilities would be. I recommend you look over our checklist, directories, website, and store to make sure you see what we offer. If you've got to the point of assigning this person, though, your company has made the decision to move forward. Managing information. The last checklist item is your first process that needs to be developed. You are at the point where you're going to start collecting and creating a lot of information. Processes, training materials, information about the work you do, and more. Make a system for storing it, or at least for finding it. You'll save yourself and your team a lot of work in reinventing the wheel. You'll also be surprised how little information will be shared between departments unless you give them a conduit to do so. Moving forward. Now go out, do your research, find a company to visit, talk to people on lean bulletin boards, take a class, do whatever it takes to get enough information to feel comfortable moving on. And if you don't decide to move forward now, put a note in your calendar to revisit a decision next year. My biggest recommendation, though, is to be 100% sure you are willing to commit to change before you move forward. Tentative, half-hearted attempts are destined to failure. That's not to say you can't pick and choose tools if you don't create a full management system. But know that those tools work best within a structure. I'll finish by wishing you luck and offering up my assistance. Contact me at info@valaction.com if you need help. Also, look for training resources at www.valactionstore.com. Thanks for watching, and best wishes on your continuous improvement journey.